Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm really excited to be here to talk about what I think is a bold and historic project. The city of Ithaca, New York, is decarbonizing all of its buildings, trying to electrify them by 2030, which is obviously a pretty short runway to do something quite ambitious. But I've got the dream team here that's going to make it happen. I think I'll start with Luis. Can you tell us a little bit about this project? Why electrification by 2030? Why Ithaca?
Well, let me start by saying that it is bold, but also very crazy. You know, it's one of those things that people tell you, don't do it, don't even try, man. But we still did it. And you know, I was inspired by what Gina McCarty was saying, you know, how stubborn she is and how stubborn we must be, you know, to address the challenge of climate change. So what happens is you get, you know, you normally go from ambition to pledge to, you know, finance and operations. And then at the end of the day, we do very little. So, and at the same time, you know, like from the federal government to the state government to local government, you know, the ambition, you know, gets smaller and smaller. So I was very happy to find out when I came to Ithaca that there was a whole community, a whole city that was willing to go for the whole thing. And they were not willing to back down. They were going to go like, you know, we're going to decarbonize the entire city, not only the building stock, you know, the entire city by 2030. So then the next task was, you know, to figure out how. And I remember, you know, with the previous mayor, Mayor Marek, he asked me the question, can we do this? And you know, I said, of course we can. Hell, we can, yeah. And then I went home and I was telling my wife, like, oh God, how are we going to do this? But the truth is, you know, you look at the emissions, you look at the source of the emissions, and then we realize that almost half of the emissions come from buildings, and in buildings it is energy use. So we know how to deal with like new buildings, you know, that's codes, you know, we can do that. But existing buildings, that's people's homes, businesses, you know, it's really hard. So you need to figure out how to do that. And then we saw that, you know, if we were to do one by one, it would be too expensive and it would be too risky, you know, from an investor's perspective. So we needed to aggregate projects. And then we figured that we needed to help the industry, you know, consolidate, and we needed to, you know, increase sophistication also in the market. We have very few options to do this. So we started, you know, putting together the pieces. And then one day, you know, I think, if you are lucky in life, it happens to you a few times. You know, one day you wake up and it's like, God, I got it. You know, like it clicks one day. And we realized, and you know, I oversimplify, but at the end of the day, what we did was, you know, we need to aggregate, you know, all of these projects so we can manage risk for the entire project, and then we can securitize. You know, then we can attract private capital. And then the last thing I want to say is that, you know, once we figure it out, we realize that we couldn't do it alone. So we need to figure out, you know, the policy aspects, the finance aspects, the technology aspects, the operation aspects. And then they came along. And I was like, okay, my job is done here. These guys can take over. And we embarked on a wonderful, wonderful project that the city approved in November. And we're in the middle of it, and it's been a blast.
So you said, and then they came along. I believe that the city has 6,000 buildings, is that right?
That's correct.
So Donnel, do you want to talk about where BlocPower comes in to transforming those buildings?
Yeah, so glad to be here and really proud of the incredible leadership that Luis has provided. Sometimes you can tell, but Luis, I think when the history of the fight against the climate crisis is written, that Luis is going to be one of the most important players, and what he's accomplished is amazing and inspirational, not in like a vague kind of way, in that Perth, Australia, and Glasgow, Scotland, and San Jose, California are looking to follow Ithaca's lead. That Luis has done the work to kind of do the heavy lifting, and you know, has the machete cutlass at the front of the jungle to cut away the hard jungle patch and clear the path for everyone else. So I'm delighted to be here today. What BlocPower does is we want to turn buildings into Teslas. And what do we mean by that? Well, Tesla and electric vehicle manufacturers have figured out how to rip fossil fuel engines out of automobiles and make them all electric. They can run on clean electricity. We can now do the same thing with buildings. With new buildings and with existing buildings, we can rip out the oil, the gas, equipment that we use to heat hot water, to provide heating, air conditioning, that we use to cook with gas stoves. We can rip out all of that fossil fuel equipment out of buildings and replace it with 100% all-electric equipment. So now that we can do that from a hardware perspective, we should do that. The buildings are healthier, they are safer, the buildings don't leak methane at night, which is what your gas stove does. It leaks methane that you and your kids breathe in all night, every night. So when we rip out that fossil fuel equipment, your building should be greener, healthier, safer, more economical, more valuable. And so what we do at our company is build digital models of buildings and help building owners understand how they can save money and make money while upgrading their building to all electric energy. And so we have a project with Jeff Bezos, who's now the world's largest climate philanthropist, where he's given us some money, or should I say some Amazon stock, which we're supposed to sell, except it's down. The Amazon stock is down. Anyway. The funding allows us to build a digital model of 125 million buildings across America so that we can simulate for all American homeowners how they can decarbonize and electrify their buildings. And so we're going to be doing that in Ithaca so that all 6,000 buildings understand what size of equipment, what kind of equipment they can and should adopt in order to decarbonize. And we're going to provide those plans to all building owners for free. So that's what we do.
Wow, that's great. But I know that although BlocPower is a major partner in this effort, I know there are other companies, startups involved. And Taylor, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about the role of the Clean Fight in this project.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It's great to be here, and it's great to be here with these great folks. So at the Clean Fight, we're focused on accelerating the adoption of climate tech solutions in New York. We have over half of the technology solutions we need to meet our net zero goals, and we believe that one of the best ways to achieve climate impact is to scale those. So to do this, we bring together innovative solutions, visionary customer partners who are ready to install those solutions today, capital partners who can help us break down the financial barriers for broad adoption. And we really try to bring those folks together in our program, which is focused on driving towards demonstrations, business agreements, financing, and investment. So we have an incredibly rigorous vetting process that helps us select growth stage startups from around the world. We pair them with our partners to explore potential opportunities, and I think what we're doing in Ithaca is a perfect example of the types of partnerships that we hope to build and support. So the project that we're working on right now is one of the first steps towards the broader adoption of smart electrification technologies throughout Ithaca. We're starting with a building owned and operated by a nonprofit called the Ithaca Neighborhood Housing Services. It's a historic building located in downtown Ithaca. It's 24,000 square feet, mixed use and affordable multifamily building. They provide 12 apartments to low and moderate income families and office space for primarily nonprofit tenants. And we're bringing together 3 of our Clean Fight cohort companies to implement a demonstration project around electrification. So Illum Energy is one of our companies that was founded in Australia. They're providing behind-the-meter solar via their patented controller called the SolShare that enables individual tenants to benefit from solar on their rooftop. We have Switch Energy, which is a Toronto-based company, which is providing end-to-end electric vehicle fast charging stations and related controls, and Urban Electric Power, which is providing energy storage systems using its patented rechargeable alkaline battery technology. So we're really excited about these technologies. We're really hopeful that they provide a great demonstration for other buildings across Ithaca and also beyond.
And is the hope, too, that by bringing together some of these newer technologies and companies, perfecting them, giving them the means to do demonstration projects, that it'll help these companies scale up?
Absolutely, right. Absolutely, yeah.
That's great. I should have announced when I came on stage, by the way, if people have questions, please submit them. We will have a few minutes for questions and answers at the end of the session. So, but before that, Tommy, yes. Somebody has to pay for all of this.
That's right.
And no one has done this before. Luis just described it as kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So, why do you think it's a risk worth taking?
Yeah, it's a good question. And when I first met Luis and he kind of told me about what the city was doing And it was crazy. I'm like, we got to be a part of this. This is a unique opportunity to really kind of build the blueprint of how we can actually accelerate the adoption of all the technologies that Donnel's talking about and Taylor's talking about. And it's going to require hundreds of billions of dollars of investment globally in order to make this type of transition to the clean global economy actually happen. And if we put that burden on every business owner or every homeowner to be able to come up with that upfront investment, it's not going to happen, at least not in time, right? So, that's where private capital is really going to come in and help accelerate that. And it is a little bit of a risk, obviously, because the city is the first one to do this, but that's part of the excitement behind it as well. Is that it's our job now to get creative and to figure out how to make this work.
Yeah. I'm curious about how you phase a project like this, right? I mean, you've got until 2030, which is not that many years left, right? And 6,000 buildings. So I understand there are kind of two main stages, right? But how, I guess I'm curious, this is mostly a question, I think, for Luis and Donnel. How you decide what buildings come first or what steps come first, and are there things that have a lot more impact if you do them in 2023 as opposed to 2027, or?
I mean, the way you start looking at a project like this is with data. So you have to look at, you mentioned we have 6,000 buildings. It's a small city. And you look at the type of economy that we have, and then you understand, what is that you can expect in terms of energy profile for every building. But then, you go back to the data, and in the data you see like 6,000 buildings, 70% are residential, 30% commercial and industrial. Out of the residential, 70% of the units are rentals, for example. 90% use natural gas, 8% propane, 2% fuel oil. So you start getting all this data, and then you start looking at how some of these buildings have already replaced their furnace, or they have already made improvements in terms of retrofitting. So not everybody's going to do this. The numbers are not going to pencil out all the time. So initially, you really start with a voluntary program, but what you create is a compelling product, financial product and an economic incentive for people to participate. So you need to understand, which technologies can play. That's what Taylor was talking about. But mostly, you need to use that data to figure out the best way of identifying solutions that are good at the moment that you are trying to address, a low-hanging fruit. And I'll, let Donnel probably complete this part. But I just want to say that when we look at the energy profile for buildings in the city, we are able to identify which ones are prime for an upgrade, no? And then, the city is relying on a program manager that is BlocPower to basically take over from that. And then Donnel does his thing,
Right.
Then comes the hard part.
Yeah.
No, I concur with everything Luis has said. So when you have the data on all 6,000 buildings in the city, you can start to tranche and prioritize the buildings into which buildings are most likely to complete a project, which buildings need to complete a project, but they're not aware of it. And so you have to do customer education to let them know, hey, you're actually wasting a ton of money in your building, and you may not realize that, but you could be saving thousands of dollars a year if you did a retrofit based on the data that we have. You can use statistical modeling and machine learning to start to identify which buildings have furnaces that are about to fail, because you can analyze the installation dates of the gas furnaces in the home and say, okay, we're like 6 years out. We think you're probably going to fail in the next 24 months. You need to be on top of this. And then you start to educate those different groups of customers according to what makes sense for them. One of the things that we think is important is starting to look at air quality. The entire country during the pandemic has become keyed in on how important air quality is to our quality of life. If you can catch COVID as it moves apartment to apartment, or classroom to classroom for your kids, like all that stuff become really important and top of mind. Well, if you're burning fossil fuels in your home, whether it's oil or whether it's gas, you are releasing methane, nitrogen dioxide, all that kind of stuff. And it is increasing childhood asthma. It's really dangerous, crappy stuff. And so gas is actually going to end up being like lead. we thought that lead paint was like a cool thing. Bright colors, we like spread it all over the country in all the buildings. And then it turns out that it causes significant neurological impairment. So now we got to go in and remove all the lead. Cooking with gas in your home is going to be like that, where as more and more studies come out, there's a study that came out from Stanford last month, right? As more and more data starts to come out, it's going to be really difficult from a health perspective to justify burning fossil fuels and then breathing it in your home. If you take a step back to think about it, like, would you like grill a steak and then stick your head in the grill and breathe it? Like, no, it's ridiculous. So, helping building owners understand the value prop around health, along with greenhouse gas reduction, along with energy savings, along with increasing the value of their home at resale, all of those things create value for building owners. And so you want to target and market to different building owners according to what makes the most sense to them.
Yeah, I mean, is it different talking to homeowners as single-family homeowners as opposed to the owner of a multi-unit rental building?
That's right.
I would think, right? Different incentives.
That's right.
Different kind of case.
That's
but it sounds like your kind of tranches are really you're really looking at data and equipment age more than, you know, this type of building or that type of building.
Well, we analyze all of the physical characteristics of the building, the maintenance and financial records of the building, but then also analyze the characteristics of the building owner. Do they drive a Tesla? Okay, well, are they a member of the Sierra Club? Well, maybe this is someone that we should talk to. And what are the kinds of messages that we would offer to them based on who they are as a building owner and the characteristics of their building? So there's a big database with the data lake that we've aggregated all of this data so we can figure out how to sell different kinds of decarbonization technologies to different kinds of building owners.
Mm-hmm. And is BlocPower, is it correct to describe the model, the business model, as energy as a service? Is that, or can you talk a little bit about your business model if that isn't quite right?
Yeah, we're a decarbonization platform. I think energy as a service model is correct with one exception. We don't, I don't know if you guys do, we don't guarantee energy savings. There's like a lot of fuzziness around like, hey, we guarantee you these energy savings up front, but oh, you left the lights on a Saturday morning, and so you've invalidated the contract, right? So when you get into the nitty-gritty details of energy service guaranteed performance contracts, there's always like an escape hatch. We don't want to play those games. What we want to do is come in and say, look, we're going to remove the fossil fuels from your home. We're going to save you a bunch of money. We're going to reduce your energy bill within this range, and then we're going to help finance it in partnership with Alturus or Goldman or Microsoft, who've provided us with some financing. But what we provide is green infrastructure CapEx as a service via our technology platform.
Okay, right. And Tommy, can you talk a little bit more about, I believe Alturus's investment so far was, what, 100 million?
That's what we've committed, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And we hope to get there, you know, and so now we have to go out and identify the projects, but yeah, please.
All right, yeah. So what is the model then that, you know, what is your promise to investors? I mean, how is this being packaged with the city, I guess?
Well, you know, there were two, and I'm going to let probably Tommy fill the gaps here, but, you know, at the very beginning of the process, we were looking at, you know, first how we actually finance solar, you know, small-scale solar, and we made it, you know, possible to do it in the entire country. So there should be a way of financing electrification of buildings. And then at the same time, we started looking at the way, you know, the Green Bank in Connecticut, for example, works, and the work that they do in terms of, you know, aggregation, you know, risk mitigation, and you know, that's the way they incentivize the participation of private financial institutions. So when we started looking at that, we figured that they were, you know, in terms of financing, you need to look at different models. But at the end of the day, it's, you know, basically project finance, you know, for an aggregate of projects. So there is, you know, Donnel, he works with some partners, so there is a combination of equity and debt. But then there is also the model that Alturus follows, which is a full equity play on financing these projects. And they have different levels of risks, and they manage risks differently. But I think in the case of Alturus, they are looking at the commercial and industrial sector, and that the numbers play differently for them. So I'm going to stop there and then probably let Tommy explain his thing better than me.
No, thank you. No, you hit it right on the nose there. And from an investment standpoint, like we kind of took the "if you build it, they will come" type of approach. So, if we say, hey, we've got the funding in place, like we're committing to actually like help these projects move along. So now the community will understand like there is somebody there that's going to actually help pay for these projects at the end of the day. So now it's time to go out and empower, companies like BlocPower and, local contractors to go out and actually identify projects and educate the building owners on here's what the options are for you, and present a case to the building owners that say, hey, if you want to electrify, here's a way to pay for it, without having to come up with $50,000 or $100,000 or $500,000, whatever it might be that has to actually implement that project. That's where we're able to kind of enable that to happen. And from the financing standpoint, our goal is to make it as simple as possible for the customer. And at the end of the day, we want it to be as cash flow neutral or better as possible. We want them to be able to save money. Will that happen every time? Probably not, right? But we hope that we can show them enough value in why they should do this and be a part of this program and get people to move.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we're the program manager, so if all this doesn't work, we're the program managers, so we're contracted to deliver on all of this.
It's on you, man.
Yeah, Luis is out of here. So, part of the way that we think about it is 20% of Ithaca is low LMI, low and moderate income.
22%, yeah.
22%, right? And so, now we got these are homes that, according to traditional financing approaches, are subprime. So what do we do, right? Because we've committed to decarbonize every single building, right? And when people think about Ithaca, they may not think about that 22%. Mm-hmm. And so what we've done is we spent a lot of time, 4 years actually, working with Goldman and their urban investment team studying the subprime mortgage market. What are the things that can be learned from the positive aspects of subprime? Not the part that destroyed the global economy. We're going to put that part on the shelf to the side. The underlying structure of a mortgage bond, right, that aggregates a pool of assets, as Luis has talked about, and spreads out the risk of default across that entire pool. What are the ways you can think about using structured financial products to ensure that clean energy is accessible to all Americans? And we think that it's critical not only to achieve Ithaca's goals, but just take a step back as people who care about climate. We are not going to be able to pass climate legislation and policy in the United States without significant participation and support from low-income communities. I mean, Senator Manchin from West Virginia has made that clear. If we had spent the last 5 years investing in solar factories and installation companies in West Virginia, we'd have a climate bill right now, right? And so this idea that we are going to have a clean energy revolution and like, oh, by the way, we're going to deal with low-income Americans because we're like nice people or we're ethical, I think is not the right way to think about it. We're not going to have a clean energy revolution without significant participation and engagement from low and moderate income communities. And so when you think about financial products, it has to be expansive and inclusive, not because it's the right thing to do, because there just isn't another strategic choice. And one of the things that I'm really proud of what Luis has done is, he didn't, tranche out the low income people into some separate poverty program and like, oh, we'll figure it out. Like, no. Everybody's going into a portfolio together and we're going to figure out how to make this work. And that is why cities across the world are following his lead and Ithaca's lead, because it's a scalable approach. And if Goldman Sachs and Microsoft and Alturus can sign off on it, then we can do this all over the world. Yeah. So shout out to Luis.
Yeah. Well said.
Well, that's a great point to end on, I think. Are there any questions?
Actually, Mike, is my mic working now? Okay, great. Cities are made out of people. What has been the community reaction, positive and negative, to this initiative? And what challenges would you forecast for less progressive towns in trying to scale this kind of approach?
Well, the reaction has been what you would expect, like it's progressive Ithaca, but at the same time, it's people's homes. At the end of the day, you're messing with people's homes. So that creates all kinds of reactions. Some people are really excited and willing to pay even if it costs a bit more, and other people are just terrified of this costing them. And what they saw John Oliver one day, and they think that this is the devil. We shouldn't do this. And so we have all kinds of reactions, but I think for the most part, the majority supports this type of program. And I think it is everything that they describe. If you think about it, it has to do with data. It has to do with data, but at the same time, once you make a decision, then you approach people. It's about engagement with the community, having the community advising, participating, and making sure that all of their objections, all of their concerns are considered at the end of the day. So that's how you do it in places that are perhaps less progressive.
Yeah, I just want to wave in. So I'm like going to Texas to, I think they're going to let me drive a Ford Lightning. I'm very excited. And so they're going to like road test these things. It has to be a better truck, right? In order for it to sell, it just has to be better. And so when we electrify and decarbonize buildings, they have to be better homes, right? And if they're better, then yeah, you can go into conservative America and sell it because it's better. So I think that's what we're shooting for, better and cheaper.
Yep.
I think we have time for one more. Could you expand on how you're incentivizing private investors to participate? Also, how are you budgeting in possible system instability or backup for any kind of system failure?
Like of the grid?
Are you talking about the grid? Is that the question? Well, that last part, we're working with a utility company. I mean, this is, when we did the first modeling, we realized that we couldn't electrify more than 15% of the city without the whole thing catching fire, quite literally. So we needed to make big investments on some of the infrastructure, but at the same time, you don't want to fall into the trap of just deploying more capital, because that's what the utility company does. They just deploy capital and make money by deploying capital. So you need to be creative and need to understand where, the savings can be actually shared even with the utility company, because that way you incentivize them to adopt non-wires alternatives, for example, that would help, make this happen. So we are, dealing with that. We understand what that is, and we know exactly where we have to go, and we have a great partner with the utility company. And incentivizing the investors, they can answer better than me, but I can tell you that what we have is a huge market. It's a demonstration project for the entire planet where we are electrifying. I mean, and just think about it, the first electric city of, that we're going to have in the United States. But at the end, it's not just about electric buildings, it's the entire energy system, is going to be different. And if we put climate justice on top of that, then it's truly the city of the future. And that's what we're building together. And I think there is a return on their investment because, we are aggregating these projects and eventually will be securitized and eventually there will be a return for the investors. But essentially, we are participating in something that nobody has done before. And who doesn't want to do that, really? I don't know, Tommy, if you want to. Sorry, I just.
No, it's exciting and, really incentivizing investors to do this. Groups like NYSERDA that have really put together programs on the back end that really help protect the investment at the end of the day, which is really going to enable more private capital to flow in and just get things to happen faster.
Everybody's got to make money off of this, right? This has to save the planet, and it has to make everybody a lot of money. And I think that's the brilliance of what's been structured here.
Yeah, and one thing, I know we are out of time, but just very quickly I want to say that, we couldn't do this without NYSERDA, without really the state government being behind.
Governor
Hurley.
That's
NYSERDA sponsored at some point BlocPower, the Clean Fight. The Clean Fight is coming up with all of these wonderful solutions. And about financial inclusion, through NYSERDA, we're creating these great enhancements that otherwise would be impossible to address the low mortgage.
That's right.
So I just want to say that.
That's right.
Yeah.
New York State is the only state in the country where this could be happening right now because of the leadership. That's right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. I think everybody learned a lot.